Hey guys, welcome to ThinkTim Languages. Today I'm going to be going through a tour of my personal language bookshelf. And this is something that I've seen some other YouTubers do, some other polyglots and language learners on YouTube. And I'm totally copying this from them, shamelessly. As most of you know, I'm a huge nerd. I love reading, I love books, I love learning. And so I kind of have accumulated quite a few books over the course of my language learning career. And so, I don't know, I don't really have a plan or a method for this. I'm just going to go through some of my books that I think are the most interesting for language learners or for people that are interested in linguistics. And just go over a few of them, and maybe that'll inspire you to look up some of these books or books that are similar to them. And I don't know, we'll see how this goes. So, I'm kind of nerdy in that I organize all of my books. I don't have them labeled or anything, but I kind of have them divided into sections. This part right here is my linguistics book section, and then I have Spanish textbooks, and then I have like Spanish linguistics books, and then I go to French and some other languages over here. So, I guess actually the first thing I'm going to start talking about is some of these, not even the books. I have some CDs here in my bookshelf. And this is Lithuanian, Teach Yourself Lithuanian, and it's a set of CDs. My mom bought this at a rummage sale for $2 because she knows that I love languages. And also I came very close to spending the summer in Lithuania this summer. So my mom bought this for me. Who knows? Maybe I'll read them someday. Or there's a book in here that you can read, and some CDs in there. So maybe I'll give it a shot someday. But right now, Lithuanian is very low on my list of languages that I want to learn. Although it is interesting because supposedly Lithuanian is supposed to be the most conservative language in the entire Indo-European family. So it's the closest to the language that was spoken by people thousands of years ago, before we had Latin and Greek and Slavic languages and stuff. Here I have the Pimsleur CD course. This is Pimsleur 4, and I'm currently working on Pimsleur 5, so I have that in the truck right now. And it's a course of, like, I think there's 15 CDs in, I'm pretty sure, yeah, there's 15 CDs in this course, which is 30 daily lessons. Each lesson is half an hour long, and I listen to those in the car every day as I drive to and from school. So that's really useful. It really redeems a lot of my time because I have a long commute. So it redeems a lot of my time that would have just otherwise been spent just driving and just looking at cows and stuff in Wisconsin. It's all audible, it's all audio, so there's no writing, there's no reading, it's all listening and speaking. And that's a huge help because there's a French teacher at my school who, and he's from France. And I was sitting in a French discussion group with him a few weeks ago, and I was in the advanced group, and as we were speaking, he pointed to me and he goes, "You could pass as French," which was a huge compliment to me, and he pointed to the rest of the people. He literally pointed to the rest of the people in the group. He goes, "You guys couldn't, but you could pass as French," and to me that was just a huge compliment, and I think a huge part of that is because I listen to Pimsleur CDs and I repeat them out loud. So I get a lot of that muscle memory practice. That's what I'm attributing it to anyways. Over here I have some books for teaching English. I have done quite a bit of tutoring in English, and I have a certificate in teaching English as a foreign language. So, and I've done quite a few courses on that at the university. And this is not even all my books, but I have here Teaching English Pronunciation, and they go over some IPA stuff in here a little bit. So that's really interesting to me, especially since, I am highly Get all my books falling over in here. Especially since I am really heavily involved in teaching English and helping a lot of my friends learn English because I like traveling so much. I'm always meeting people that are trying to use me for English practice, and that's a useful tool to have. Here, this is interesting. This is the Tokipona book. I did a video a month, maybe 2 months ago on Tokipona, which is a constructed language. Someone made it up about 15-20 years ago, and they just made this language up. But the really interesting thing about this language is that it only has approximately 120 words, maybe like 123 words in the whole language. Here's the dictionary right here. There's just a few pages, and that's literally all the words in the language. And there are people who speak this, and they can have fluent conversations. So that's a really interesting language, and this is the official book for the language. And it just gives you everything you need to know. It has some comics and stuff that were written in Tokipona. They have their own little hieroglyphic system in here. It's just really interesting. And I have spent a little bit of time learning this language, not a ton. Because to me, the value of this language is not so much actually being able to speak it, but just it's an experiment. You learn the language for 2 weeks, and you just see what it's like to learn a language that has such a limited vocabulary. It's really cool. Then moving on over here, I got kind of moving into my French section. Here I have a bunch of French linguistics books. I have French syntax, French phonetics and pronunciation, exercises in French phonics. If you study linguistics at all, you're going to realize that there are very separate, distinct subfields of linguistics. You got syntax, semantics, phonology, morphology, phonetics, pragmatics, and those are kind of like the hard sciences of linguistics. And there's other fields as well, sociolinguistics and historical linguistics. But knowing each one of these subfields of linguistics is really useful to language learners because they each deal with a separate aspect of learning languages. I just want to check really quick, make sure my battery is not dying on the camera. Okay, good. Battery's still going. We're still recording. Each subfield of linguistics is just super valuable to have knowledge about if you're learning languages. If you want to improve your pronunciation, then you want to learn phonetics and phonology, and specifically the phonetics and the phonology for the language you're learning. If you want to get better at creating sentences, then you want to study syntax. If you want to make sure all of your sentences actually make sense, rather than saying things that sound weird or things that just are ambiguous or don't make sense, you want to study semantics. And no matter what, you probably want to study pragmatics because you're learning a new culture and you're going to be in all these weird contexts. So knowing about linguistics is super useful, and especially if you can find books about the linguistics of the language that you're learning. So that's why I have these. I actually have quite a bit more than just these. I'm not sure where my other ones are right now. But this is my French linguistics section. I also have some textbooks. I've actually only taken one French class in my entire life. And so this is the one textbook that we had to use. It's not your typical textbook where it's like teaching you grammar and stuff. This was for a conversation class, so it has a lot of exercises and stuff for learning more colloquialisms and for learning to speak quicker and stuff. I've actually never actually looked at this book since I got out of the class. But the thing is, with textbooks, it's like you buy them for $100 and then you go try to sell them back to the bookstore and they'll give you like $5 for it. So I just keep my books because to me it's more valuable to have this, even if I never look at it again. This is a really interesting book. This was actually this was co-written by a professor from my university. It's called Learning French from Spanish and Spanish from French. And just as the name sounds, if you already speak French or if you speak Spanish, then this book is like a guide to learning the other language by using the things you already know from French or Spanish, whichever one you already speak. And this is really interesting. I love the idea of this book. Throughout the whole thing, they have, like, you'll see these little lists where you have one list in blue and one list in like this orangish red color. I don't know if you can see. I don't know where the focus comes clearly into focus. But there's a blue column, red column, and essentially the blue column is words in French, or sentences or phrases or whatever they're trying to highlight in French. The red one is in Spanish, and they do this to highlight the differences and a lot of times highlight the similarities, because French and Spanish are very similar. And they go through very methodically through a lot of these subdomains of linguistics. They go through sounds, they go through orthography, semantics, and syntax and stuff, and it's not a super thick book, but there's a lot of really good information in here. So if you're learning Spanish or if you're learning French and you already know the other one, I highly recommend this book. And if you're learning other languages as well, I don't know, they might have learning Russian from Ukrainian and Russian and Ukrainian from Russian, or I don't know, learning Danish from Norwegian and Norwegian from Danish or something like that. I would definitely look into that. But if you're learning French or Spanish, definitely this was a huge resource for me. This is so a lot of you probably know Benny Lewis if you are at all if you watch a lot of YouTube videos about language learning or whatever, if you follow polyglots. He's a famous polyglot on YouTube, on Twitter, just online in general. He has his own blog, Fluent in 3 Months. And he takes a lot of criticism, I think, because a lot of people think it's false advertising to say you can become fluent in 3 months. And to me, I don't think that's false advertisement. I think that's just, how do you define fluent? Fluent is such a... this word is a slippery little eel that, it's like water running through your fingers. What is fluent? I don't know. I don't have any idea what fluent means. So if you're taking a really lax approach to the word fluent, then maybe it is possible to become fluent in 3 months. I think that's kind of what he is going for here. Because his goal is essentially just to learn enough of the language in 3 months so that you can have engaging conversations with people that speak the language, whether or not you're speaking correctly. And actually his emphasis is usually on not speaking correctly, just learning how to communicate your point without worrying about being grammatically correct. And this is a great book for beginners. He has a lot of really good methods for learning languages quickly. And his main purpose, his main goal, his message that he's communicating is that you need to speak right away, no matter how badly you sound. And he has this little manifesto, this little creed right at the beginning of the book that he has you sign and date. I'm just going to read a little bit of this creed, this pledge, if you will, because I think this is really good. He says, "I will speak French today and every day, if only a little. It will feel awkward and uncomfortable at times, and that's okay. I will accept that the only way to speak perfectly is to first make mistakes. The only way to overcome my fear is to face it. The only thing preventing me from speaking French is ... speaking French. I will embrace my inner Tarzan. I will say things in French like, I Benny, me writer, I Ireland. I'll do this because I'm still learning and because I don't take myself too seriously. I will communicate effectively instead of perfectly. Over time, I will make massive leaps." And it goes on, but you get the point. You get the idea of this pledge, and then you sign it at the end. And I think that's great. That's a great mindset, a great attitude to have. I pledge to make mistakes every day in my language, and that's how I'm going to learn. So I really like Benny's attitude, even if you don't agree with everything he says. I think he's a good guy. And I also have the same one in Spanish, even though, like, honestly, by the time I bought these books, especially by the time I bought the Spanish book, I was way past the level where this would have been useful. But I just bought it because, you know, I thought it would be nice to help some of my friends who are learning Spanish. And I was also teaching Spanish lessons for a while, so I thought that would be a useful tool. And he even signed this one when I bought it. He says Benny, and then there's a little clover in there, I guess because he's from Ireland. Which means nothing to me, but if you're really into that kind of stuff, then maybe you would like that. Let's see, what else do I have here? Here I have some Spanish linguistic books. Introducción a la Lingüística Española. This is Que Buen Suena. This is a basically a phonetics book for Spanish. They take you through a lot of the IPA. If you don't know the IPA, I always stress this. I think the IPA and learning the features of the sounds in the IPA is huge. It's huge for learning correct pronunciation. They give you little charts and stuff in here. This is like a sagittal view of the mouth. And it really is nice for helping you to understand what's going on with your lips, your tongue, your throat, your velum, all this kind of stuff when you are pronouncing words in your foreign language. Because if you don't have that knowledge, then there's no way someone can just describe to you, well, you gotta raise your velum and you gotta trill your uvula or something. You know, these words aren't gonna mean anything to you, even if they can describe exactly what it's like to make this sound in the language. Here I have phonetics and Spanish phonetics and phonology. This is a really nice book. It teaches you to go through a lot of the different allophones in the main Spanish dialects. So that's really useful to improving your language abilities, your pronunciation in particular, and trying to reduce your accent. Now, I always say you should not be ashamed of your accent. If you have started learning a language as an adult, you're always going to have an accent, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing you can do about it, but you shouldn't be ashamed of it anyways. But once you've reached a really high level in the language, there's nothing wrong with keep progressing and keep trying to move towards that perfection. You never will speak with a perfect accent, but you can always get closer. And that's just, this is not coming from me. This is what the field of second language acquisition is saying. Once you've left that critical age of like 7, 8 to 10 years old, you're just not going to learn to speak perfectly. But there's nothing wrong with trying to move closer to that perfection. So that's what these books are really good for. Oh, I didn't mention this one yet. This is Introduction to Spanish Linguistics, and this covers essentially all the subdomains of linguistics. Not just, these other ones are just about phonetics and phonology, but this is about syntax, semantics, it talks about historical linguistics, a little bit of sociolinguistics. So that's really good. This was actually a textbook that I had in my Spanish linguistics class a few years ago. Here are a few more Spanish textbooks. This was a book that I had in a Spanish conversation class. Same deal with my French book. I don't really have any reason to hold on to these. I don't look at them anymore, but I would rather just hold on to them than throw them out, because you never know. Maybe someday I will find some use for it. Alright, Advanced Spanish, a course in Advanced Spanish Grammar. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words because everything is backwards. It is Course of Grammar Advanced of Spanish. But, you know, what we'd say in English is Advanced Spanish Grammar Course, or something along those lines. This is a class I took last semester. I already spoke Spanish fluently, but you don't realize how deep the grammar goes sometimes. And this course was really nice for just like really zooming in on. Alright, here we have the Handbook of the International Phonetic Association. And the IPA is something that I've talked about a lot in other videos. If you're really serious about improving your pronunciation and your accent. So I've talked about let me see where I can find it in here. There's got to be a chart in here. I've talked about the International Phonetic Alphabet before, and that's this. They give you one symbol per sound that the human mouth can make. Essentially, that's it. It gets kind of messy, especially with vowels and stuff, but they give you one symbol per sound that the human mouth can make. And then they're able to spell out the words that we pronounce explicitly. And it's not like English, where sometimes you have words like pneumonia that start with P for no reason, or knife, or the word K-N-I-G-H-T, which in Monty Python they pronounce as knigget. Why is there a K and why is there a G-H in the word night? The International Phonetic Alphabet solves this problem by giving us a very explicit way of writing out the words that we pronounce. And it doesn't solve all of our problems because, of course, depending on what area you're from, you're going to pronounce words in a different way. But it's really useful for learning to improve your pronunciation. And they go through and they give you a lot of phonetic information about a lot of the languages of the world. Like here's the IPA for Amharic, the IPA for Arabic, IPA for Hebrew, Igbo, which I've never heard of, Japanese. And this is just going to be really useful and really interesting if you're interested in pronunciation. And I guess this is essentially the last book I have here that's going to be of interest to most people. Second Language Acquisition. That's the name of the book. This is a textbook that I had in my class that was called Second Language Acquisition, an introductory course. This was really interesting. I found it really useful for someone that's interested in learning languages. The question that is posited, the question that is asked in this book is, why do adults who are learning a language speak that language differently than children who are learning their first language? And as you can see, they spent a lot of time explaining that question. And this is a whole field of study. This is a subdomain of linguistics, and I found it really fascinating, really useful. Taking the course itself was not exactly what I thought it was going to be. This is a science book. You learn the scientific method, and you learn how to apply that while studying people who are learning other languages. Now, when I took a class called Second Language Acquisition, I thought this class was just going to be about how do you learn a language? What's the best way of learning a language? Give me all the tips and tricks for learning faster. It's a science class. It really is. You recruit participants to come, participate in your second language acquisition study, and then you study how they learn languages. But it's interesting, and it's really valuable, gives you valuable insights really into the psychology of what happens in your mind when you're learning a language. So I would recommend taking a course if you're interested in this, because as you can see, this book is not, it gets pretty deep, and there's a lot of theories and stuff, a lot of hypotheses, and it is science. But it's interesting, and I like it a lot. So this is one of my bookshelves. Maybe I'll do another video soon on my other bookshelf. I actually have a lot more. Oh, I didn't even get into any of my Greek stuff, but this video has been pretty long as it is. So I'm going to end the video there. If you want to see any reviews on specific books, like I said, I've already done a review on The Art of Language Invention specifically, but if you want to get a review on any of these specific books, leave me a comment below. I'm always trying to find out what videos would be most interesting to my viewers and my subscribers. So by all means, leave me a comment below. Ask me my thoughts on a given book or on a given type of book. And especially if it's a book in here, then I'll make a video reviewing that book. If it's not a book that I have, you know, I'm always looking for new books, so it might be worth it for me to order it on Amazon and review it for you guys. So that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.